I don't know about you, but yeah, I'm getting pretty fed up with certain parts of the games industry at this point. $7. What's that $7 about? Well, this is the price of a single mission for Starfield. The mission lasts about 15 to 20 minutes, and for completing the mission, you get a suit of armor and a new weapon. Yes, I know, if you don't like it, don't buy it. But at this point, that defense, that argument is complete rubbish. It's a non sequitur, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But first, here's why I'm making this video. Now, Starfield was highly anticipated, we all know that, and it had a particularly negatively spectacular launch, spectacular in the bad sense. Now, I'm not going to argue about or rehash all the points that come up back then during launch, or in fact, I'm not even going to talk too much about Starfield itself. What I really want to focus on is what's going on with the games industry and wondering why some people seem to be accepting it. And I fully realise this video is likely to get me some backlash. Not everyone's going to want to hear this, but at the end of the day, I feel this needs to be said. The point is that criticism is a valid form of communication, and no matter really how harsh it is, unless it gets to the point where it is completely abusive, at that point it does cross a line. But criticism is a valid part of our, it's a valid part of our society, really, a valid part of commercialism, a valid part of capitalism. And if you're a customer and you're purchasing something, or if you're a customer or a fan of a franchise and you want to purchase something, then you have every right to criticize. Unfortunately, though, there's a growing trend amongst the communities out there who don't like criticism. They don't want to hear it and they want to shut it down. And hence we come to the argument, if you don't like it, don't buy it. This is a non sequitur, it's a pointless argument, one that largely misses the point entirely. The point is that these companies really shouldn't be releasing shoddy things to start with. And the other point is that criticism does indeed work. And we've seen that recently with Helldivers 2, and we've also seen it with many other recent games, not to mention other franchises and other industries. If people don't give feedback of the harsh sort when things go wrong or when things aren't right, then things tend not to get fixed. And also, as a content creator, I have seen some of these things behind the scenes. I've had discussions with various different studios of some of the popular games that I do cover on this channel, and you'd be very surprised to hear that despite the fact that these studios don't talk about the feedback publicly very often, feedback of the critical nature, very harsh feedback, does shape their product. It does shape the way they think about the games and the way they approach the community. In other words, it is effective. So Starfield, $7 for a single mission. I want you to look at this image on the screen right here for a minute, and we can really think about what's going on. The image shows the number of factions and the number of related missions that exist within Morrowind. So despite the fact that nearly 20 years separate these games, Morrowind had 18 different guilds you could join with a total of 311 missions, and Starfield has just 4 different guilds or the equivalent and a total of 39 missions. Of course, I fully realise there's a difference in complexity between these two games, and to be perfectly fair to Starfield, here is the comparison of the total number of quests between some more modern games. This image comes from the website Rant, and you can see 200 missions for Starfield. Fallout 4 had 191 quests, and Skyrim had 273. But it's not the total number of quests that I actually want to compare here. I really want to illustrate how Bethesda are cutting particular types of content out, such as the number of guilds, with the intent to actually sell them to you. Forget about all the flaws and whatever other concerns you have about Starfield, and forget perhaps about the reasons that you actually enjoy it. What I want to look at here is very simple, very straightforward. It's very black and white. It's a numbers game. The numbers on the left far exceed the numbers on the right. The quests in Starfield, in terms of quantity and quality, far exceed the number of missions in Starfield. Why is that? Why, despite 12 years of progression in technology, things seem to be going backwards? Well, it seems we got the answer to that question this week. When Starfield was released initially, the Trackers Guild, the Trackers Alliance, was very much present in the background, but there was no way to actually join them. Many people suspected that this would come in the form of DLC and paid content, and they were 100% spot on. So it seems then that Starfield has a reduced number of both factions and missions because, quite simply, Bethesda want to chop them up and sell them to you piecemeal. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of this approach, but I'm also not a complete idiot. I do realise the realities of businesses, and despite the fact that there's games like Baldur's Gate 3 out there which sell massively successful games that are more or less fully complete and don't have any plans to chop them up and sell you piecemeal content, understand that not all businesses are going to have that same approach. So yes, we fully expect that Bethesda were going to sell some paid DLC. And everyone's going to have a different tolerance to this. Some people are going to point blank refuse to pay anything whatsoever and be very much against it. Other people, it seems, the whales perhaps are going to pay for absolutely everything that comes out. There's also a view that exists somewhere in between, and for me, that would be, yes, I'm willing to pay for some additional content to Starfield or any similar games. And when it comes to Starfield, I'd be willing to pay $7 or even $10 for a full faction or full guild, just so long as that came with a full chain quest along the length and size and complexity of the Thieves Guild or the Brotherhood in Skyrim. Now, of course, people are going to argue about the value of that and whether or not it's actually worth something like that is actually worth $10. After all, back in 2015, I believe it was, Witcher 3 did get an expansion called Hearts of Stone, and that was priced at $10 as well. That got you around about 10 hours worth of gameplay and a whole bunch of additional content, including entirely new areas. But also, we've got to remember that is nearly 10 years ago at this point, and the world today is very, very different. Specifically, the games industry, as well as the economy, I guess, is dramatically different. But none of that gives companies such as Bethesda the right to take the piss. And I think that is exactly what is going on. They're taking players for a ride, and unfortunately, it seems that a number of players are willing to go along with it. And the problem here is that the more people who do go along with it, the more likely Bethesda are going to continue doing this. In fact, the more likely not only will they keep doing this, but perhaps over time also increase the price and reduce down the duration. They're going to just keep pushing the line to see how much they can get away with and how much they can charge for that. So yeah, ultimately this has led to some backlash amongst the community, quite a bit in fact. It'd be completely remiss to say people aren't complaining. You only have to look at my previous video on Starfield to see many people aren't happy about it, and just jump in on the Starfield subreddit, you can also see a lot of people complaining there. Also, there's been a few negative reviews over the past few days over on Steam as well. So yeah, overall people are not entirely happy about this. But that said, there's also plenty of people defending this, and quite a few saying simply, if you don't like it, don't buy it. They just don't want to hear the criticism. It's a strange movement. They don't want people to point out the obvious. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think anyone who's watched this channel long enough will know me well enough to know that, generally speaking, I don't pick sides. Most people tend to be pretty reasonable about these sort of things. But at the end of the day, you do get a point where things just get pushed too far. And I think right now Bethesda have pushed things too far with this. So is this simply a matter of price? Is it a matter of principle? Is it a matter of, well, things just not being done the way they used to be? I think all of that and much more. If Bethesda do insist to continue going down this route, I think perhaps maybe $1 or $2 for a single mission wouldn't be too bad, but I still think that's not really the way I'd like to see things go. I'd much prefer to, well, what would you prefer? Would you rather see full chains of missions where you get a complete story and you can follow it through beginning to the end? Would you rather these individual, and let's call them what they are, these MMO-styled missions? Go and kill 10 rats and pay $7 for the privilege. That's where we are in gaming at the moment, and that's not to say that all of gaming is complete shit, because obviously it's not. There's a whole load of good games out there, and quite rightly, the recent Xbox Showcase, the Microsoft Showcase, has been praised as being one of the best for many, many years, and I completely agree with that. This is just one bad example, but something I really wanted to pick up on, because obviously I have spoken about Starfield quite a bit on this channel, but more than that, I really feel that it's something that needs to be said. So there we go, rant over, all said and done. Let me know what you think about this subject in the comments section.